At 1 in the morning, the most dangerous man in Seoul stood in a dark alley in Guro and watched his housekeeper walk into an abandoned warehouse. He had come to catch a thief. For 3 months, Naomi Adebayo had been vanishing at midnight. She came back at 4 in the morning with mud on her shoes. Her wages went into her hand on Friday and were gone by Saturday, and she never bought herself anything. Not a coat, not a coffee, not one single thing. His men had opinions, his second-in-command had opinions. She's selling something, or she's buying something, or she's telling somebody what happens in your house. Han Tae-oh runs half of this city. He has never raised his voice in his life, and has never once needed to. When he asks a question, people answer it before he finishes. So he asked her directly, in his own study, and Naomi Adebayo looked him in the eye and said, "That is my time, sir, not yours." Nobody talks to him like that. Nobody has in 11 years. So tonight he followed her, 40 minutes on foot through the parts of the city that do not appear in brochures, and he stood in the dark, and he waited for the proof. There are 2 kinds of men who look at a poor woman and see a criminal. The ones who are afraid of her, and the ones who need her to be one, because the alternative is unbearable. He was about to find out which one he was. What was a housekeeper doing in an abandoned building in Guro at 1 in the morning, 3 nights a week for 3 months? And why did the old man inside look up and stare straight into the dark where Han Tae-oh was standing, and Bo? Stay with me, because he went there to catch a thief. He came out having found out exactly what kind of man he had become. And it was not the woman who told him. It began with a shoe. Han Tae-oh noticed things. It was the reason he was still alive at 39 in a business that killed men at 30. He noticed that on Tuesday mornings, Thursday mornings, and Sunday mornings, the housekeeper's shoes were wrong. Not dirty from the garden, not wet from the rain, mud, grey, oily, industrial mud, from somewhere that was not this house and not this district. He noticed that she wore the same coat for 8 months, that she never took the staff car, that she declined the annual bonus every year, and could not be argued out of it. And he noticed that she was always gone at midnight. "She's paid well," Choi Sang-hein said. "She is. Housekeeper's wages in this house are 3 times the going rate. She could buy a coat. Sang-yoon let that sit. He was very good at letting things sit." "So where is the money going, sir?" "Tae-oh said nothing. My people saw her in Guro," Sang-yoon said. "Twice. Guro, you know what is in Guro?" "I know what my second-in-command thinks is in Guro." Sang-yoon smiled. He had an excellent smile. It reached everywhere on his face except the part that mattered. "Sir," he said, "she is a woman with nothing who is somehow spending everything." That is a sentence with only 3 possible endings, and none of them are good. The staff had already decided. That was the thing about a house with 40 people in it. It did not need evidence. It needed a story, and a quiet woman is the easiest story in the world to write. She never talks. She never eats with us. I saw her counting money in the pantry. Doing what with it, though? That's what I'm saying. Naomi Adebayo walked through the middle of all of it with her cart and her cloth and said nothing at all. She did not defend herself. She did not explain. She said, "Good morning" to the cook, and "thank you" to the gardener, and she scrubbed the floors of a criminal's house until they shone. Tae-oh watched her for 2 weeks. She was 30. She had been here 8 months. Her file was 3 pages long and told him nothing because it had been filled in by a woman who did not want to be known, and she was not afraid of him. That was the part he could not get past. Everyone in that building went quiet when he entered a room. The guard stopped talking. The cook stopped moving. Naomi looked up, said "Sir," and went back to what she was doing. He called her into the study on a Thursday. "Sit. I'd rather stand, sir. Sit down, Miss Adebayo." She sat. Her hands were folded. Her shoes were clean. She had scrubbed them. "You leave this house 3 nights a week at midnight," Tae-oh said. "You return at 4 in the morning. You do this in a district where women do not walk alone." "Yes, sir." "Where do you go?" "Out." He waited. She let him wait. It was the first time in 11 years anybody had done that to him. "Your wages," he said. "Every Friday you are paid a sum that most people in this city would call generous. Every Saturday it is gone." He tilted his head. "You have no car, no jewelry. You have owned the same coat since the day you arrived. So where is my money going, Miss Adebayo?" And Naomi Adebayo looked at the most dangerous man in Seoul and said, "Your money, sir, stops being your money on Friday." The room went very still. "That is a remarkably brave sentence," Tae-oh said. "It's an accurate one. You understand what I am asking you." "I understand exactly what you're asking me." Her voice did not rise. It did not shake. "You're asking me whether I'm stealing from you. And I'm telling you that what I do between midnight and 4 in the morning is my time, not yours." She stood up. "Will that be all, sir?" He did not have her searched. He thought about it. He did not have her followed by his men either. And he told himself it was because he did not trust them to do it quietly. That was a lie, and he was not in the habit of lying to himself. So he sat in the dark of his study at 11 o'clock that night and looked at it honestly. He did not want anybody else to see whatever it was. Sang-hyun was right about one thing. There were 3 possible endings to that sentence, and none of them were good. She was selling his secrets, or she was buying something that would ruin her, or somebody had a hold on her that she was too frightened to name. Every one of those was a problem. And underneath all of it, in a place Han Tae-oh did not look at very often, was a 4th thing. He wanted to know, not as her employer, not as the man who owned this house. He wanted to know where a woman who had nothing went at midnight 3 nights a week, and came back with mud on her shoes and nothing in her pockets, and looked him in the eye the next morning without an ounce of shame. At 11:50 the side gate opened. Han Tae-oh put on a black coat, told nobody, and went out after her. She walked. That was the first thing that got under his skin. 40 minutes on foot at midnight, in a city where his own men would not walk that route without a weapon. She did not take a taxi. She could have. She had money on Friday. She carried a canvas bag over one shoulder, and it was heavy, and she shifted it 3 times. He followed her at 50 meters. He knew how to do this. He had done it to men who were expecting it. They went out of the good districts and into the ones nobody photographs, past shuttered shops, past a market that had closed hours ago and smelled of fish and wet cardboard, down a road where 2 of the streetlights were dead and nobody had come to fix them in a year. She never once looked over her shoulder. That was not the walk of a woman doing something she was ashamed of. Tae-oh knew that walk. He had made a career out of men who did that walk. She walked like a woman going to work. She turned into an alley in Guro, grey industrial mud in the gutter, and she pushed open the door of an abandoned warehouse and went inside. He gave her 90 seconds, then he followed. The door was unlocked. It had been unlocked for years by the look of it. The hinges had given up. Han Tae-oh stepped into the dark and stopped. There was light at the far end. Warm light, not electric. Camping lanterns, a dozen of them, strung on a wire along a beam, and there were people. 60 of them, maybe more. They sat on benches made of pallets. They sat on crates. An old woman had a folded blanket under her. 2 men in coats too thin for October shared a bench and did not speak. A boy of maybe 19 sat alone with his hands between his knees. They were queuing. The line went the length of that warehouse, quiet and orderly, and at the end of it there was a long table made out of a door laid across 2 barrels. On the table stood an enormous cast-iron pot, and behind the pot, sleeves rolled to the elbow, apron over her grey uniform, ladle in her hand, stood Naomi Adebayo. Han Tae-oh stood in the dark and did not move. "Mr. Jang," she was talking as she poured. "How's the cough?" "Better. You said that last week. It was worse last week. Sit near the lantern. It's warmer." She handed him a container and turned to the next. "Sumin, did you go?" The woman looked at the floor. "No, Sumin. They ask for an address, Naomi. I know they ask for an address. I gave you an address." Naomi did not stop ladling. "It's the shelter office on Donggil, and I wrote it on the paper, and I put the paper in your coat. Go on Tuesday, I'll walk you. You work Tuesdays, then I'll walk you Wednesday. Next." And so it went down the line. She knew their names, every single one of them. She knew who had a cough, and who had a hearing, and who had a daughter who was not calling back. She asked about the daughter. She did not preach at them. She did not look at any of them with pity. She simply fed them and remembered them and moved on to the next. 60 people, 3 nights a week, for 3 months. Han Tae-oh, standing in the shadows in a coat that cost more than that entire warehouse, did the arithmetic that he had built his whole life on. The rice, the vegetables, the gas for the burner, the containers. Her wages went in on Friday and were gone by Saturday. He had believed, walking here, that there were 3 possible endings to this sentence. He had been wrong. There was a 4th, and it had not once occurred to him, and now that he was looking directly at it, he understood exactly what that said about him. A woman with nothing, spending everything. He had assumed a crime. He had gone through every ugly explanation his mind could build, and not one of them, not for 1 second, had been she is feeding people. Because in the world Han Tae-oh had made for himself, nobody gave anything away. There was no such thing. Every generous act was a transaction with a delay on it. Every kindness was a debt being quietly opened in your name. He had spent 11 years being certain of that, and he was standing in an abandoned building watching a housekeeper spend her entire salary on 60 strangers and ask an old woman about her cough and know her name. His chest had gone tight in a way he did not have a word for. He should have left. He knew that. He should have turned around and walked out into the alley and gone home and never said a word about this to anyone as long as he lived. He was still standing there when the old man saw him. The old man was somewhere near the end of the queue. He was 70, perhaps more, thin. His coat was worn, but it had been brushed. His back was straight. He held his container in both hands, the way a man holds something when he has been raised to have manners and has not forgotten them. He took his soup, he thanked her by name, and then he turned around. He looked, without any hesitation at all, directly into the darkness at the back of the warehouse, straight at the spot where Han Tae-oh was standing, in the black, in a coat that cost more than every man in that room owned put together. Nobody else had seen him. 60 people, and not one of them had looked up. The old man had. He stood there for a moment, holding his soup. Then Park Jong-soo set the container down on the nearest crate, straightened his worn coat, and bowed, a full bow. Slow, formal, the bow you give a man to whom you owe something, or from whom you have taken something, or who has taken something from you. And he said in a voice that carried the whole length of that silent warehouse, "Han Sajangnim, it has been a long time." Every head in the building turned, and Naomi Adebayo, standing behind a cast-iron pot with a ladle in her hand, looked up into the dark and went absolutely white. Nobody moved. 60 people had turned around, and 60 people were looking at a man in a coat worth more than the building, and every single one of them had gone very still. They knew who he was. Of course they knew. Han Tae-oh stepped out of the dark. "Sit down," he said. "All of you, eat your food." Nobody sat down. "Please," he said, and the word came out of him strangely because he could not remember the last time he had used it. They sat. Old Man Park did not sit. He stood exactly where he was, holding his soup with his back straight. "You don't remember me," he said. "No, that's honest." Park nodded slowly, as if a suspicion had been confirmed, and he was not angry about it. "Park Jong-soo, I had a bakery on Yeonhwiro, in Mapo. Something moved very far back in Han Tae-oh's memory. 10 years ago," Park said, "your people held the note on it. I fell behind, 4 months. He shifted the container in his hands. They were very polite about it, if that helps. Nobody shouted. Nobody broke anything. Mr. Park, they just took it. It was legal," Tae-oh said. "Yes, you signed the note. I did every word of it." Park's voice was mild. "I signed it because my wife was ill, and I needed 40 million won, and the bank would not look at me, and your people would. That is not a complaint, Sajangnim. That is simply what happened." "Then what is your complaint?" And the old man looked at him with such patience that Han Tae-oh, who had faced down rival bosses and prosecutors and a man with a knife, wanted very badly to leave the room. "I don't have one," Park said. "What, I don't have a complaint?" He shrugged one thin shoulder. "You lent money. I took it. I could not pay it back. You took the shop. That's the whole story." "That is not the whole story." "No," Park agreed, "but the rest of it isn't yours. The rest of it is my wife dying anyway 8 months later, and me being 62 years old with no shop and no trade and no wife." He said it entirely without self-pity. "That part had nothing to do with you." Tae-oh could not speak. "Sit down, Sajangnim." Park gestured with his container at a crate. "You look hungry. Are you hungry? I am not going to eat your food." "It isn't mine." The old man's eyes went gently to the woman standing frozen behind the pot. "It's hers." So Han Tae-oh looked at the room. He made himself do it. He went face by face along the benches, the way he went line by line down a ledger, because looking at things properly was the only skill he had ever fully trusted. The man with the cough, Mr. Jang, 55 maybe, hands like a dock worker's, which docks. The woman who would not go to the shelter office because they asked for an address. Sumin, 38. She had the posture of someone who had once had an office job and had not stopped standing like it. The boy of 19 sitting alone. Two men on a bench in coats too thin for October, who had not spoken to each other once and who were sitting close enough for warmth anyway. Han Tae-oh had run this city's east side for 11 years. Loans, debt, property, collections, every single line of it perfectly legal on paper. Every single line of it a document, a signature, a schedule, a number in a column. He stood in a cold warehouse and understood, in a way that arrived like a physical blow, that these were not strangers. They were his ledger, standing up, with names. He waited outside in the alley until it was over. At 4 a.m, Naomi came out with an empty pot and a canvas bag over her shoulder, and she stopped dead when she saw him. "You followed me, yes. You thought I was stealing, yes." Naomi Adebayo let out a long breath and looked up at the sky above the alley and did not say anything for several seconds. "Well," she said, "at least you don't lie. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you?" And she laughed, and it was not a kind sound. "Tell you what, sir? That I cook for the people you bankrupted. Did you want me to put in a request?" "That is not. Should I have written it down? Should I have come to your study and sat in your chair and said, 'Excuse me, sir, on Tuesdays I feed the man whose dock job your people ended, and on Thursdays I feed the baker whose shop you took'?" Her voice had not risen. That was what made it terrible. "Is that the conversation you think we could have had?" Tae-oh said nothing. "You are the reason I don't tell you," Naomi said. "That's the answer. You are the reason." He came to her the next evening with a number. "I have transferred funds into an account," he said. "It will run that kitchen for 10 years. Better food, proper burners, heating in the winter, a van so you do not walk." Naomi looked at the paper he had put on the table. She did not pick it up. "No, Miss Adebayo, no, it is money." His voice did not rise, but something under it did. "They are cold. They are hungry. You are walking 8 kilometers in the dark 3 nights a week and spending every one you earn, and I am telling you that it can stop. And who is it from? I don't understand the question. The money." She pushed the paper back across the table with one finger. "Where did it come from?" Han Tae-oh looked at her. "You cannot buy forgiveness with your own money, sir," Naomi said quietly. "Especially not when it is money you took out of their pockets in the first place." She stood up. "You want to write a check so that you can stop feeling what you felt in that warehouse. I understand. I would want that too. Then let me fix it." "You cannot fix Mr. Park's wife," she said, and she went to scrub the floor. He came back on the Tuesday. He did not announce it. He came in the door in an old coat with no driver and no men, and he stood at the back of the warehouse, and everybody in the room saw him. The queue went quiet. Naomi did not stop ladling. "There's a crate," she said without looking up. "By the door. If you're going to stand there, sit down. You're making them nervous." He sat down on the crate. He sat there for 2 hours. He did not speak to anybody. Nobody spoke to him. At the end, when the last person had gone and the lanterns were being pulled down off the wire, Naomi carried the empty pot to a plastic basin of grey water in the corner and started washing it. Han Tae-oh stood up. He took off his coat. He folded it over the crate. He rolled up his sleeves, and the dark ink on his forearms came out into the lantern light for the first time in that building, and he walked over and picked up a cloth. Naomi looked at him. "Those hands have never washed anything," she said. "No, it's cold water, there's no heater. I can see that." She handed him a bowl. They washed dishes side by side at 3 a.m. for 6 weeks. It is a very strange thing to fall in love with somebody over a basin of cold water. You're doing it wrong. It is a bowl. You're rinsing before you scrub, so you're rinsing dirt with dirt. Naomi took it out of his hands, scrubbed it, rinsed it, and gave it back. Like that. "Who taught you?" "My mother. In a restaurant kitchen. I was 7. She couldn't afford a sitter, so I sat on a crate and dried plates." She shrugged. "It's why I don't mind this. It smells like my mother." Tae-oh scrubbed a bowl. Correctly this time. "The man with the cough," he said. "Jang, Mr. Jang. He worked the docks. Pier 4, 18 years. She did not look at him. There was a restructuring. 6 years ago, everybody over 50 went. That was us." "Yes," said Naomi. "It was. He kept washing. He did not stop. And he did not apologize, because he had begun to understand that an apology was a thing you said to make yourself lighter, and he had no right to be lighter. "Tell me the rest," he said. So she told him, not all at once. Over weeks. Over cold water and empty pots and a warehouse that got colder as October went into November. Mr. Jang, Pier 4, 18 years Sumin. She had been an accountant. A small firm. It went under when its landlord tripled the rent, and the landlord was a holding company, and the holding company was one of his. The boy of 19. His father had borrowed money. His father had not been able to repay it. His father had gone into the river 4 years ago, and the boy had been 15. Han Tae-oh listened to all of it, standing over a basin with his sleeves rolled up. He never once said that was not me, because in every single case it had been. "Why do you do this?" he asked her. "Because they're hungry." That is not an answer. Naomi wrung out a cloth. "When I came to this country," she said, "I had 11,001 and nowhere to sleep. And a woman I had never met in my life sat me down in the back of a shop in Guro and gave me rice. She hung the cloth on a nail. She is dead now. I never paid her back. You can't. That's not how it works." "Then how does it work?" "You pass it on," Naomi said. "That's the whole system. It's not complicated. In the 6th week, she did not hand him a cloth. She handed him the ladle. I can't. It's soup." "Naomi, he did not move. They know who I am." "Yes," she said, "they do." She put the ladle into his hand and closed his fingers around it. "So let them see you doing something with those hands that isn't taking." Han Tae-oh stood behind a cast-iron pot in an abandoned warehouse in Guro, in a shirt with the sleeves rolled up and 40,001 of tattoo on his forearms, and served soup to 60 people whose lives he had helped ruin. Nobody thanked him. He did not want them to. Mr. Jang came through the line, held out his container, and looked at him for a long moment. "You've got the wrist wrong," Jang said. "Sorry, turn it as you pour, or you'll splash." He demonstrated with his empty hand. Like that, Tae-oh turned his wrist as he poured. "Better," said Mr. Jang and moved on. And Han Tae-oh, who had not cried since he was 11 years old, had to go and stand outside in the alley for a few minutes. Naomi found him out there. "You're crying." "I am not." "Han Tae-oh." She leaned against the wall beside him. "You're crying in an alley. It's cold." They stood there. Somewhere down the street a dog was barking. "Mr. Jang taught me how to pour," Tae-oh said. "He was a foreman. He taught people for 18 years. A pause. It's the only thing he has left that he's good at. You gave him a chance to do it. That was kind." "I did not do it to be kind. I know." Naomi turned her head and looked at him. That's why it was. He looked back at her, and in that alley, at 3 in the morning with grey mud on his shoes and cold water still on his hands, Han Tae-oh understood that he had spent 11 years being feared by an entire city, and had never once in all that time been seen. He did not kiss her. He wanted to. He said, "Thank you," instead, and meant something enormous by it. Naomi nodded once. "Wash the pot," she said. "It's your turn." The notice went up on the warehouse door in the 3rd week of November. It was printed on good paper. It was laminated. Somebody had taken care. Naomi read it twice. Then she took it down and carried it out to the alley, and put it into Han Tae-oh's hands without saying anything at all. "An order of scheduled demolition. This site and adjacent lots have been acquired for redevelopment. All persons must vacate within 30 days. And at the bottom, in small, clean type, the name of the company that had bought it. Tae-oh stared at it. He knew that name. He knew it the way you know your own handwriting. It was a subsidiary, 3 companies down, buried in a structure he had built himself, so that nothing could ever be traced back to the top. "It's us," he said. Naomi did not answer. "It's my company." He looked up at her, and for the first time since she had known him, Han Tae-oh looked frightened. "I own the ground they are standing on. I have owned it the whole time." 30 days, Naomi said. "I didn't know." "No," she said. "You never do. That's rather the point, isn't it?" He went back and he read his own books. Not the summaries, not the reports that Choi Sang-yoon laid on his desk every Monday in a leather folder. The actual books, line by line 3 years back with a pencil and a legal pad and no sleep. It took him 9 days. He found the Guro acquisition on the second day. It was clean, approved by committee, signed by him. He found the thing on the 7th. "Sit down," he told Sang-hyun. "Sir, sit." Choi Sang-hyun sat, and he was still smiling, because he had been smiling in this room for 11 years and it had always worked. "The Guro redevelopment," Tae-oh said. "Who brought it to committee?" "I did. It's a good site." "It is a terrible site." Tae-oh laid a page in front of him. "There is no transport link, there is no zoning permission, and there will not be one for 6 years. We paid 4 times what it is worth." "The market. We paid 4 times what it is worth," Tae-oh said, "to a company registered in Incheon, which has one director, whose name is his wife's maiden name." The smile did not move, but something behind it did. 2 years, Tae-oh said. 11 acquisitions, every single one of them a bad site at an inflated price, bought from a shell, and the difference goes out through a laundry into an account in Jeju. "Sir, you are tired. You have been reading ledgers for 9 days. "Say my name." Sang-hyun stopped. "You have called me, sir, 400 times in this room, and I have never once thought about it." Tae-oh sat back. "Say my name." "There it is." He nodded slowly. "One more question, and then I will decide what happens to you." "Sir, 3 months ago you told me my housekeeper was seen in Guro." Tae-oh's voice did not change at all. "You suggested she was selling my secrets. You put that in my head deliberately. And you did it so that if anybody ever looked at the money going into Guro, there would already be a thief in this house with a name and a face, and no way to defend herself." Choi Sang-hyun said nothing. "You picked her," Tae-oh said, "because she is quiet and foreign and poor, and everybody in this house had already decided she was guilty of something. It was business." "Yes," said Han Tae-oh, "that's the problem." He called the council for the Thursday, 9 men around a table, the old ones who had served his father. The capos who ran the districts, every person in that organization whose opinion could move a room. He put the ledgers in the middle of the table and let them read. It took 40 minutes. Nobody spoke. When they had finished, Han Tae-oh stood up. "There is one more thing," he said, "and then you may vote." He turned to Choi Sang-hyun. "Park Jong-soo," he said. "Baker, he had a shop on Yeonhiro in Mapo. We held the note. He fell 4 months behind and we took it. 10 years ago." Sang-hyun blinked. "Sir, you signed the seizure." "Your name is on it." I looked. Tae-oh's voice was perfectly level. "Do you remember him?" The room was completely silent. "There were," Sang-hyun said carefully, "a great many seizures that year. I know. I signed most of them." Tae-oh nodded. "That is not what I asked you. I asked whether you remember him." "No," Tae-oh agreed. "Neither did I." He looked around the table at 9 hard men who had spent their lives in a business of numbers and columns and names that stopped being names the moment they went into a file. "That," he said, "is the whole disease. It was in him. It is in me. It has been in this house since my father built it." He put his hands flat on the table. "Sang-hyun stole from us because he stopped being able to see anything but numbers. And so did I. And I stole a great deal more than he did, and I did it legally, and I slept perfectly well." They voted. Choi Sang-hyun did not go into a river. He went, with 2 years of his own accounts, his own signature, and a great many photographs, to a prosecutor who had been trying to open a case against him for 4 years and could never find a door. Tae-oh gave her the door. It was, several of the older men said afterwards, the strangest thing they had ever seen a boss do. "You do not hand your own man to the state. It is not done. He stole from us," one of them said. "There are ways. I know the ways. I have used the ways." Tae-oh was looking out the window. "And every time I have used them, it has been to keep something out of the light." He turned around. "I am tired of the dark. Let a court have him." He killed the Guro redevelopment the same afternoon. He killed 4 others as well, because he had gone through the books and found that they were all like Guro. Sites where people had built their small ruined lives in the cracks, and where a company he owned was quietly going to bulldoze them for a car park that would never be built. And he thought that was the end of it. He drove to Guro that night to tell her. "I've cancelled it," he said. Naomi was scrubbing the pot. She did not stop. The demolition. All of it. The land is not going to be developed and nobody has to move. He was almost breathless. "It's done. I signed it this afternoon." "Good." He waited. She kept scrubbing. "Naomi." "That's good, Tae-oh." She rinsed. "You've stopped taking something you were about to take." She set the pot down and finally turned around, and her face was not unkind, and that was somehow much worse. Now what about everything you already took? He stared at her. You gave them their warehouse back, she said. You have not given Mr. Park his bakery back. You have not given Mr. Jang his 18 years back. You have not given Sumin the firm she worked for, or that boy his father. She dried her hands. You cancelled a future crime. Congratulations. That is the lowest bar there is. Then tell me what to do. No, Naomi, no. She hung the cloth on its nail. I have spent 3 months feeding 60 people out of my own wages, and I am not also going to carry your conscience for you. She looked at him steadily. You are a very intelligent man. You are perfectly capable of working out what a person is owed. You have simply never once bothered, so he worked it out. It took him 4 months. He did not write a check. He had learned that much. He bought a shop on Yonhuro in Mapo, 2 doors down from the one that had been Park Jong-soo's, and he had the ovens put in, and he did not tell the old man anything until the day it was finished. And on the morning of the handover, Han Tae-oh painted the front door himself, badly. It took him 11 hours, and he had to do the second coat twice, and Mr. Jang came down and stood over him with his arms folded and said things about his wrist. You're pushing the brush. Don't push it. Draw it. It's a door. It's a door your name is going to be on, said Mr. Jang, and took the brush him and showed him twice, and gave it back. Park Jong-soo came at noon. He stood on the pavement and looked at the shop for a very long time, and did not say anything at all. The lease is in your name, Tae-oh said. There is no note on it. There is no debt. If you close it tomorrow and sell the ovens, that is entirely your business, and I will never ask you about it. The old man's hands had begun to shake. I am 73 years old, he said. Yes, I have not made bread in 10 years. No, Park Jong-soo put one hand flat against the glass of the window. It will come back, he said. It's in the hands. He did the rest of it too. It was less dramatic and it took longer. Mr. Jang got a job. Not a gift. A job? At a warehouse Tae-oh owned, running the floor, because a man who has been a foreman for 18 years does not need charity. He needs somebody to hand him a clipboard. Su-min got an address. It turned out that an address was all she had ever needed, and that a man like Han Tae-oh could produce one in about 40 minutes. The boy of 19 went to a trade college. Tae-oh paid. The boy did not know who was paying, and Naomi made him swear he never would. He is 19, she said. He should not have to be grateful to the man whose company killed his father. That is a debt no child should carry. Then he'll never know. No, said Naomi, he never will. That's the point. And the warehouse in Guro stopped being a warehouse in Guro. He got it licensed. He got it heated. He put a proper kitchen in the back, and a roof that did not leak, and 60 chairs that were actual chairs. He did not put his name on it. He put Naomi's. She found him in the kitchen on the first Tuesday it opened. He was standing at the counter looking at the new burners, in a suit that cost more than the burners, with his hands at his sides, entirely unsure of what to do with himself. Naomi came in behind him. She did not say I love you. She had never once said anything easy in her life, and she was not about to start. She held out an apron. Han Tae-oh looked at it. You want me to work here? I want you to serve, she said. Every Tuesday, not sign a check, not visit, not open a wing of a hospital with your name on it and shake somebody's hand for a photograph. She pushed it at him. Stand behind the pot and put food in people's hands and learn their names. That's the job. For how long? For as long as it takes you to stop needing to ask that question. He took the apron. He put it on, badly, and she reached up without thinking and fixed the strap at the back of his neck, and both of them went completely still for a second. Then she stepped back. Wrist, she said. Turn it when you pour. I know how to pour. Said Naomi Adebayo and went to open the doors. The queue came in at 6. Han Tae-oh stood behind the pot with a ladle in his hand, and his sleeves rolled up, and the ink showing on his forearms, and he served them. Somewhere near the middle of the line, a man came forward that he had never seen before. 50s. Thin. A work jacket with a company logo that had been scrubbed off. Tae-oh filled his container. He looked at his face. Mr. Yu, he said. The man stopped. Name. You were at Pier 9, said Han Tae-oh. You came on Thursdays. You always sit near the door because you don't like your back to a room. He set the ladle down for a moment. Your knee's been bad since the cold came. Did you go to the clinic? Mr. Yu stood there holding his soup and could not speak. Go to the clinic, Tae-oh said. It's free now. Ask for Dr. Im, and he took the next container and the next. Across the room, Naomi Adebayo was wiping down a table. She had stopped moving. She was watching the most dangerous man in Seoul remember a stranger's knee. And when he finally looked up and found her, across 60 people and a room full of steam, she did not say anything at all. She just smiled at him. There is a lie that powerful men tell themselves, and it is written in a very quiet voice, in a column, in a book. It says that if it was legal, it was clean. It says that if you never saw the face, there was no face. That a debt is only a number, that a shop is only an asset, that a man who goes into the river was a line item that failed to perform. Han Tae-oh believed that for 11 years he was extremely good at it. He never once raised his voice. He never once broke a law that could be proved. He slept perfectly well. And then he followed his housekeeper into a building in Guro, certain that he was about to catch a thief, and he found 60 people eating soup she had bought with her own wages. And every single one of them had a name. You cannot give back what you took by writing a check. A check is just another number, and a number is how the whole thing started. You give it back with your hands. You give it back on a Tuesday in an apron, badly for years. And if you are very lucky and you keep showing up, one day you will look at a stranger in a queue and remember his knee. That is not forgiveness. Nobody is going to give you that. It is simply the beginning of being a person again. If this one found you tonight, you already know what to do. Like this and stay. Because the next story is already waiting. Another dangerous man, another woman he badly underestimated, and another truth he was not remotely ready to find.